Hello, my name is Ryan Gaffin, and this is my third video log for the GLP project. In my second interaction with Eric, we discussed motivation and the importance of school to each of us. The first thing that we discussed was how adults keep children motivated in our different cultures. We found that it was dramatically different between the two of us, which didn't really surprise me at all. I'm fortunate enough to come from a fairly wealthy family in the northern suburbs of Chicago, so my parents have often offered me incentives such as buying me new video games or even just giving me money if I did well in classes. Obviously, most adults wouldn't use this tactic, and it often didn't work for me because I knew that I would probably end up getting what I wanted anyway. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Eric told me that his parents would punish him very harshly if he did poorly in school. If he ever had a bad grade in class, his parents would take away all electronics and not allow him to go out for extended periods of time. It was quite interesting to me to see the two different approaches, although I wasn't surprised at all. I know many people, even in my neighborhood growing up, that were punished similarly to Eric was for bad grades. For me, staying motivated in school was always very difficult. I have never been a very good student, but I was always a great test taker, so I got by with decent enough grades. When I got to college, I quickly learned that I could no longer get by doing well on exams and not doing homework, although I still miss homework assignments that I really should be doing. I'm not really sure what caused my horrible work ethic, but I certainly need to improve it. After my first semester at Michigan State, I was put on academic probation, which was the biggest motivator I've ever had in my schooling career. I have done much better the past 2 semesters since I was put on probation because the threat of being kicked out of the school was enough to scare me into doing more of my work. When I asked Eric what motivated him in school, he said that his future is very important to him, and he understands the significance of schoolwork in having a successful future. Obviously, grades are important to me, but I have never been too upset if I didn't get a good grade on something, especially in high school, because I always knew that it didn't really matter for me in the long run. I always knew I didn't want to go to a great academic school, and I always knew I was doing well enough to get into most Big Ten colleges, which was where I wanted to go. So I had really no reason to care about getting better grades. My parents cared more than me because they knew I had the potential to do much better in school, but they never really pushed me too hard on it. Eric's family seems to care much more about grades, and any bad grades were not tolerated. I wouldn't say that grades matter more or less to either of our communities, because it sounds like there are families in both communities that care a lot about grades and families that don't care nearly as much. There is a very wide range in my community, and my family is certainly more toward the caring less side. My family always supported me if I was successful at something or if I failed at it. Anytime I tried something new, it didn't really matter how I did, my family would be behind me. I tried many sports and played a few instruments growing up, but was never very good at any of them. And my family supported my decisions to quit, even though they could have considered that a failure. It seems that Eric's family was relatively similar, although he didn't really have many experiences that he could recall really failing at. Eric and I discussed what it means to be smart, and we both agreed that there are different ways people can be smart. Some people are street smart, meaning they are good at talking to people and getting their way, while others are book smart, so they get good grades and know a lot of school-related information. There's also some people who are just naturally smart people, so they don't have to try very hard in school and can still do very well, while others aren't as naturally smart, so they have to work harder and learn the information they need to know. We talked about this for a little bit and pretty much had the same idea of what being smart really means. I asked him how teachers would react if someone was struggling in a class, and it seems that his teachers were relatively like mine. I had some teachers that would intentionally call on the students that didn't know the answers to questions, while others would just pull those students aside after class to talk to them. There were many different approaches teachers would take for these students, and the approaches were pretty similar for both of us. We discussed how far out of their way teachers would go to help a student and how much they really cared about the success of the students. In my school, most teachers would do just about anything they could to help a struggling student, and they were always available to answer questions via email or to meet with a student one-on-one if they needed it. Eric said that most teachers in his school wouldn't really go out of their way to help a struggling student, but if a student asked for it, they would make sure they knew where to go, whether it be a tutor or a help room in the school or something else. Overall, it seems like we had pretty different attitudes towards school growing up, but I think our communities were relatively similar. Both of us seem to come from places where most people care a lot about grades in school, and we both received high-quality educations. The only major difference were our personal attitudes, where I was very unmotivated in school and he was always motivated and worked very hard.